Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. On behalf of the ACLU of Rhode Island, I'm here to express our organization's strong support for this legislation. You've heard all the policy arguments. I just want to reiterate a couple of facts and then try to answer a few of the questions that people have raised during this hearing so far. First, again, to emphasize, you've heard it, 12 states in the District of Columbia have this law in effect. We hear all these horribles, but the fact of the matter is there are a dozen states that are doing quite well allowing this privilege to undocumented immigrants. Second, as a matter of history, it's also important to keep in mind Rhode Island for many years allowed undocumented immigrants to obtain a driver's license. It was only during the Carcieri administration that a DMV policy authorizing it was rescinded. So we have lived with it as well without the dire consequences. To try to answer a few of the questions that have been raised, Representative McEntee asked about the language about the affidavit. My understanding is the reason it's worded that way, you have to sign an affidavit saying that you are applying or will apply, is because some people are not eligible until a few years go by in order to actually apply. So they cannot, at the time they're applying for the driver's license, be able to apply for citizenship. They have to wait, and that's what that language, I believe, is designed to address. The bigger question that has really arisen on a number of colloquies has to do with this issue of how safe can people be in applying for this special license in light of what's going on with the federal government. And I think it's a very legitimate question. The one concern, in fact, I would say people do need to weigh that possibility. On the other hand, please keep in mind this bill, unlike some of the other state laws, does require individuals to have filed taxes for 2 years, which means that they've applied and gotten an individual tax identification number, an ITIN number. So the information is already being collected for these individuals. They've already made a decision by applying for an ITIN number to potentially be targeted by doing that. The one concern I do have about the bill's language, and we've suggested 2 amendments to the bill, because I think it does change the balance, the weighing that people have to make in deciding whether to apply for a license or not in light of what's going on at the federal level. The Attorney General submitted a letter raising concerns that the bill doesn't allow for a national criminal record check. This bill impliedly does. It doesn't have the right language to allow it, but if you look on page 6, lines 33 and 34, it talks about convictions in this or any other state. The only way to find out about convictions in another state would be to do a federal criminal record check. And one of the amendments we propose is to get rid of that reference to other states. As far as I know, none of the other dozen states that currently have this law require a national criminal record check, and I think there's a very good reason for it. If you have that in there, then I think it does make sense for people not to apply for the license. The fingerprints, the information will go to the FBI, which then goes through a number of databases, including Immigration and Department of Homeland Security databases. That's the real concern. I think if you do not require individuals to have that federal check, I think they're a lot safer. But if you do require a federal check, I'm not sure it's worth individuals risking what may happen, especially in this atmosphere. The other amendment that we've proposed is a very minor one, but this bill does have some important provisions about protecting individuals from discrimination based on their use of this special driver's license, but doesn't have any remedies. So the second amendment we propose would have some remedies as well. I think by having those 2 amendments, I think immigrants can make a much more informed decision, weigh the potential consequences of this database somehow being shipped over to the federal government versus all the real benefits that come from being able to have a driver's license, not worry about being pulled over by police and running into all sorts of problems simply because they don't have a driver's license because they're not eligible to obtain one. With that, I'll stop, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Brown. There was a second element in the AG's letter to the committee, and in it they suggested providing a felony offense for those who provided fraudulent documentation to the DMV for the purposes of seeking such a license. Could you let me know what your views are with regards to that as an amendment, please?
I can only give a preliminary view because I did just see the letter, but my understanding is that's already a crime. I'll defer to the criminal defense lawyer on the committee, but I think that already is a crime.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Filippi.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, and thanks for acknowledging that the issue of the federal government obtaining this data isn't a red herring, that it's an actual legitimate concern. You had said that someone would already have to be filing taxes and they have to have an ITIN number. Is that a state number or federal?
No, that's a federal number. So there is the ITIN is for people who do not have or do not qualify for a Social Security number but want to report their tax information.
So let me be clear. On page 5, lines 24 through 28, it says that someone had to file state taxes for 2 years. And my question is, does someone need that federal number to file state taxes?
I believe so, but I couldn't answer that for certain.
Okay, so we're not certain whether someone would have had to have even communicated with the federal government or obtained an ITIN number in order to file those state taxes.
I'm not sure. I don't know how it would be processed without the ITIN number, though.
Okay, and so the concern I have still exists because maybe someone isn't filing taxes now, they want a license, and they start filing their taxes for 2 years, and at that point they enter into a database that maybe they wouldn't have been in before if we hadn't passed this law allowing for a different type of license. It's more of a statement than a question. We've had a lot of goings back and forth up here. And
I understand it, but again, I think it's a decision for the individual to be able to make.
And I agree.
An informed decision as to whether they want to take that.
And I agree. I'm just highlighting the issues that we may create.